Okay, John, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's absolutely my pleasure. For the guys who are listening, lots of people are obviously going to know who you are, and then lots of people who follow my podcast for me or for paragliding, etc., maybe won't know who you are. So, I mean, I would introduce you as probably one of the most prominent and successful ultra runners, definitely within the UK. I think that's fair, right?
There's a lot of different niches in ultra running, but in some sectors, yeah, I think so.
How would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm an endurance athlete, so mainly focus on mountain ultra running, and kind of the longer and the worse the conditions, the steeper, the hillier, the better I tend to do.
A sucker for punishment, we call that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I deal with it a bit better. I think that's one of my talents. Not so much being fast, but just dealing with it.
Yeah. So where does the boundary where's like the line for ultra? When does something become ultra in the eyes of, I don't know, the regulatory, if that's the right terminology? When does it become ultra?
Uh, Technically, as soon as you go past a marathon, so
Okay.
26.3 miles would technically be an ultra. Generally, the shortest distance out there that's run on a regular basis is 50K.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
just a bit longer than that, but there's races now that go all the way up to 200 miles, or things that span entire weeks.
Yeah, I've seen obviously the Moab 200 is quite a famous one, isn't it? So I've spent a fair bit of time in Moab base jumping, so I know the terrain out there. And then when I first heard about that, I was obviously for some weird reason I've been sort of obsessed with ultra running documentaries and stuff for a long time. I have no reason why, because I'm by no means a runner. I run mainly to help with weight loss if I've got fights coming up. I used to put in a 5k a day just to help, like, a fasted 5k to help burn extra calories to help make fight weight. I'm a mesomorph, definitely. I'm, like 5'10", 85 kilos. I wasn't built for doing any sort of running. So, but for some reason, I love the idea of long marathons, long ultras, because I'm assuming that it takes you to mentally, it takes you to a very dark, secluded place that you only really hit within those periods of your life.
Yeah, it's definitely the case, and to me, that's one of the things that's appealing to me about them. Not in a masochistic sort of way. I think that's a bit of a misperception a lot of people have. But for me, it's about putting yourself in a situation where you are in that deep place, and you're facing, here are my strengths, here are my weaknesses. Everything is magnified so much, to an extent that you learn so much about yourself, and how you handle those sort of deep, desperate situations. But you're doing it in an environment that, for all intents and purposes, it's pretty safe.
Yeah.
We're fortunate to live in a world where we're not getting chased by lions, and we're not having to run from gangs of thieves on a regular basis on the streets. We're pretty safe.
Mm.
But putting ourselves at the edge, and putting ourselves at those kind of boundary conditions that we no longer experience, I think teaches us a lot of valuable lessons.
Yeah, too many people are comfortable, right? I think there's a certain, I think the more uncomfortable you make yourself, the more comfortable you become in lots of other facets of life. I mean, I find that with obviously being punched in the face is not comfortable for many people, but you get so comfortable within that environment, being punched, being choked, being arm locked, that you get so much more comfortable in other facets of life. And you look at things in a very much like, well, this isn't going to bother me kind of way. And I think that I think more so with what you do. I think that mentally, is going to create that you're going to become mentally so much tougher through the endurance side of things, because I have to endure at the most 5 minute rounds of someone punching me in the face if it's really horrible. To endure hours, miles, like hundreds of miles, days, it's, yeah, the toll must be full on, I can imagine.
Yeah, and it's a totally different type of pain and experience. I'm not hurting, I think, to the extent that you are getting punched in the face, but like you said, there's a lot more in front of me, and it's
Mhm.
mentally hard to convince yourself to keep going when you still have so much left. And that is something where you just continually get stronger. You continually learn from being in those situations before, and you realize that, hey, I can pop back from this low. I can get through this. I can keep going, and here's how we're going to do it. And like you said, that applies far beyond running. I've had that mindset at work and many other things of thinking, I've done this crazy race before. I can do this. No problem. We got this.
Yeah, exactly. So it's surprising how strong, how you don't even realize, basically you shrug things off so easily, and then other people will just mention something to you, I guess, like, oh, you deal with stuff so well, and you don't even think about it because you're not even really dealing with it. It's just come and gone because of the stuff that's been there before. Um, so when did it start? How did it start? You're obviously you're from the States. You in high school? Were you like a distance runner, or how and where did running start, and how did it get to where it is now?
So yeah, I ran growing up. I ran track and cross country in high school. I was good. I wasn't great at it. And then in university, I didn't run much. I went the intramural sports route. I don't know if you have intramurals here, but just kind of groups of teams within the university get together and square off. And so I
Yeah.
spent my time doing that, and didn't really get back to running until about I was almost 30, and
Wow.
kind of decided, I always wanted to see what I could do at longer distances, and I realized that if I wanted to see what I could do, that I needed to do it. It was, time was kind of running out before I started inevitably declining a bit. So signed up for a marathon, went at it really with completely horrible, awful training, and it was a terrible experience. And came away from it and said, I think I can do better than that. And
Yeah.
so I did, and I just kind of kept progressing, and it snowballed from there. Of, well, marathon thing's going pretty well now. I think maybe I can go a little bit farther, and then a little bit farther, and it just progressed to the point that I realized I was pretty good at these kind of long multi-day things.
How far into the marathon running were you when it evolved to something longer? Was it, you've done three, so you're like, I've got this, I can handle this now, let's go? Or was it a case of, you've been running marathons for a couple of years and you thought, well, if I'm gonna do it, I need to start pushing for something bigger now?
So one of the big goals of a lot of marathon runners is to qualify for the Boston Marathon,
Hmm.
and so that was my goal sitting out, and I did that. But the way that the timing worked, I qualified for it, but then I couldn't actually run the race for like a year and a half. So I kind of said, and that was three marathons into it. I guess a year after my first terrible marathon. And well, I should keep myself in shape. What else is there? And I decided to try out trail running and try out triathlon, and uh, went from there and decided to stick with those things even after I ran Boston.
So are you living in the States at this point? Because you're literally round the corner pretty much now. You're in Bristol, the same as myself. So at this point, though, are you in the States still, or did you already come over here?
Yeah, I'm still in the U.S. at this point. I moved here about 2 years ago, in 2019, and at this point, we're back in 2015, when
Mhm.
I kind of started progressing beyond marathons.
Yeah. So,
So,
and you're from Tennessee, right?
yep,
And so,
yep.
what's is there like a big scene in Tennessee, or because I would imagine longer distance running, the community is probably quite small. Although I mean, it's probably not going to be like your local running club. There's 10 people, but I should imagine it's quite small within the realms of running.
Yeah, it's definitely you know, a much smaller group. And in the U.S., with it just geographically being so large, it's pretty spread out.
Mhm.
Here, you've got a pretty good density of fell runners and Scottish hill runners and the like, that are out doing these things. In the U.S., it's much more dispersed. You know, but gradually you go to these small races and things in the US, we call them fat ass events, where there's no awards, no aid stations. It's basically just a glorified group run with a start and a finish line. And you get to know these people, and it's an incredible community. Like, just everyone I've met through it is just an awesome person.
Yeah, it's well, I guess like it's a very solitary sport, I should imagine, because even with the big group, you're isolated for a big part of a run. I'm imagining. So it's a very solitary sport, I would think. But at the same time, the only people who know what you're going through are the other people who are going through what you're going through, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, definitely so. And that's kind of one of my first big races near my home, where I grew up in Tennessee. It's called the Barkley Marathons, and so it's pretty notorious. And there's been some documentaries to where now it's fairly well known outside of ultra running. But in that first one, my crew was my dad and my wife, and you know, there other family members there that just right down the road where I grew up, and they'd never seen anything like this before. And I'm coming in between loops, and they're looking at me and they're like, "Do we need to call an ambulance? He needs to go to the emergency room." And everyone else that's been there before, "Nah, get him some chicken soup. He'll be good."
I think
And
we definitely need to touch on the Barkley marathons because so about 2 years ago I put a post up on Facebook. I've got lots of friends in America. I've spent a lot of time there myself. I've been 30 or 40 times and I lived there for a year. And so I posted up, I've just watched this documentary on the Berkeley marathons. I need someone on my podcast who's done it. And nobody got back to me with somebody they knew who had like competed. So I was like, oh, so I kept chasing, kept following. And then when I reached out to yourself and you said, yeah, obviously it's, you're probably fed up of talking about it by now because it probably gets more attention than some of the other great stuff that you've done, which I do want to talk about, obviously, like the grand round and stuff, that sort of stuff. But the Barkley Marathon is so different and so unique. Maybe you could run the guys through what qualifying's like, how you actually get in, and then how you did in 2017.
yeah, so it's pretty difficult just to get into it. There's kind of a hidden application process that just filters people down, and then beyond that, only 40 people can run it each year because of regulations by the park that it's run in, and to kind of maintain the feeling of solitude while you're out there, of people being isolated from each other and not crowded. So I was able to get in 2015, kind of just before the documentary came out and it exploded. And it is a unique race. You know, you don't know the exact starting time until an hour before it starts. It can be anywhere between midnight and noon. And it's mostly off trail. There's no marked course, no GPS or electronic devices allowed. You just have your map and your compass. And there are various checkpoints, books throughout that you have to find and kind of verify that you followed the course. But it's covered in briars and rocks and just horrible terrain and completely unpredictable weather. And you have 60 hours to finish. It's probably around 130 miles, and there's around 70,000 feet of ascent throughout. So 15 people have finished in a bit over 30 years.
Yeah. It's so touching on the book thing, it's right that you get a page from a book. So you're page 10, let's say. Every book you pass, you have to grab page 10 out of that book and bring back with you, right?
Yeah, and so that just verifies that you hit all the checkpoints, followed the course, and it's 5 loops. So then the next loop you get a new number, and you have to go get that page out of all the books.
And it's one loop one way and then reverse loop back the other way for your next loop.
Yeah, he started changing that in recent years to where it can be pretty unpredictable which direction you head. But yeah, there's a lot of reversing back and forth, and when you're out there in those woods, that can make a pretty huge difference. The forests are so thick and everything looks the same. Heading the opposite direction, it's it can feel completely different.
And I mean, this is a race that's based on people escaping from prison. That's how it started, or jail. That's how it started, right?
Yeah, so there's a maximum security prison there located near the course that has housed some pretty notorious criminals. One of them was James Earl Ray, the man who assassinated Martin Luther King Jr. And so he broke out of prison at one point, and he was gone for around 60 hours. And when they found him, he was just a few miles from the prison, kind of curled up in the fetal position. And the race director kind of as mockery of him. That's how far he got. I could get 100 miles in that amount of time, and so he made this course, and the terrain is so rough, and I mean that's why they put the prison there. That's a really hard distance to cover in that amount of time.
Yeah, it's I mean, obviously, I watched the documentary. I've seen it twice now, in fact, and the terrain is unbelievable. I mean, lots of the people around here or who listen maybe will imagine, a rough walk down Snuff Mills with some stinging nettles and stuff. But this is like real terrain. People coming back with like severe lacerations from bramble and gorse and stuff on their legs, and you have to go through like a stream and stuff, so you're wet as well. So it is some real horrible terrain, and it's through the night. It's you could be woken up at any time, as you said, so it could start at 1 a.m. So you're running them through the night, body clocks all up to cock as well, and you're racing. It's pretty intense.
Yeah. The year I finished, the first 2 years, it started at like 11 a.m., like a nice late morning start. But you're up. I was up pretty much the whole night, both those years, thinking, what was that sound? Did he just blow the conch? Is it about to start? Did I miss the start? And you're freaking out, and you can't get any sleep. And then the third year, I finally, like, I got to sleep and was down for a nice full night's sleep. And then he blew the thing at 12:42 a.m. We started at 1:42 a.m. So again, I got pretty much no sleep.
It's so he blows a conch shell, and then that gives you an hour, and then he stands by the gate and smokes a cigarette, right? And when the cigarette's finished, that's when you go.
Yeah, well, when he lights it,
When he lights it.
that's when we start up. That'd be even more cruel if we had to stand there and
Uh,
wait and watch him
I
watch him
think
finish.
I think that's why that's the sadist in me. That's the bit that I wanted to do. I watched it. But so you just said then the year that you finished. Now you obviously finished it, and in 2017, right, you finished it. For context, how many people started that year? How many finished it? And how many had finished it previously at that point?
So there's around 40 people each year, and I was the only finisher that year. One other, my friend Gary Robbins, made it agonizingly close, and didn't quite make it. but so I was the 15th finisher and the 17th finish. There are two people, one who has finished twice and one who has finished 3 times. But that person and my Jared Campbell, he's the one who's finished 3 times. No one has finished since I did, and no one except for Jared or I have finished since 2014.
Wow. It's just mind blowing that something like this exists. It's just crazy, because when I first stumbled across it on Netflix, I was like, what? And so I watched it, and then, of course, I was telling everybody, have you seen this? And a few people had seen it. Now, I would say now I'm probably 1 in 5 people seen it. It's still it's not very many people still who I speak to have seen it, maybe 1 in 5. And then when you watch something like that, then I'm getting to speak now to somebody who finished it, but not only finished it, was the last person to finish it. It's just insane that this thing exists, and you guys go out there and run it, and then there's still now so few of you that have actually completed it, because I guess there's people out there who are training specifically for it, right?
Yeah, and it definitely does require some specific training. It's such a unique event. There are some things you have to do to prepare yourself that you wouldn't do for most other races, and you've really got to dedicate yourself to it for a good chunk of the year.
Yeah, it looks insane. I mean, for yourself, I don't know how is it as tough as I would think it is, or is it for someone like yourselves? It's more of the novelty side of it as well that makes it so appealing to you. Do you undertake the challenge because it is that much of a challenge, or is it sort of one of those things? Well, it probably wouldn't even factor in my top 5, but the novelty side of it makes it such a prestigious race for me.
Definitely the challenge, and it's very appealing to have something that is going to stretch you to your absolute limits. Most other things that we do, like I do a marathon and I finish, and it's kind of like, well, could I have done more? I don't know. Like, people finish, and that tells you can do that, but that doesn't tell you what your actual limit is. Whereas a challenge like this, it's going to stretch you until almost everyone finds their limit, and it's right there. It's right when they stop or they quit or they get timed out. And the race directors even joked that the people who go home empty-handed are the ones who finish, because they're the ones who didn't get to find out what their limit is.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say I was pretty much at it when I finished, in all fairness. But that was the main appeal for me, and then also, again, the fact that I grew up right there. It was really meaningful to me to get out there and run that race in those mountains.
Yeah. So when did the race start? When was the first year?
I believe 1988.
So you'd heard about it, I guess, being so local. Is it quite well known by you?
So I mean, we kind of knew there were some crazy people that came and ran around out in the woods once a year, but it's a real rural area. Running's not much of a sport there. Not even the local high school doesn't even have a track team, and so this sort of ultra running definitely isn't on their radar, and it wasn't until much later on, kind of towards the end of university, that I really learned about it, and it was more through long distance backpacking, hiking that I was doing at the time that I heard about it.
Wow, it seems great. Like, even that just goes to show that even when you live, I mean, people shouldn't think that, you know, a lot of the states are like it being in Bristol. It's not like it's at Ashton Court and you lived in Ashton. It's a very different thing being in Tennessee, and it being just around the corner is not the same thing as it being in Bristol and just around the corner. So there is that. But even so, for it to be in the same state, and it's still got that air of mystery that even the local people don't really know what it is, just goes to show it just how. Yeah, it's got a huge romanticism for me, because obviously I watched the documentary and I seen it and I was like, this is awesome, because that's me all over. I love wildness, craziness, people who want to go out and do extreme things. That's what I'm drawn to. Other people will, they want to stay in their comfort zone, but I look at that Barkley marathons. I'm like, not only is it crazy, not only are you guys off your head, but you know the bringing a license plate and the bringing stuff from your, all that sort of stuff really interests me because it's wacky, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a unique experience, and I mean, like you kind of alluded to, outside of the challenge, it's great to have things that are just a bit different,
Yeah.
and that's it. You know, it's been great for me, even just living in a different country and experiencing all the little different things, the little different foods, the different words, everything else. It's just adds a good bit of spice to things.
Yeah. So are you going back? You'll run the Barkley again?
Sometime, yeah, yeah. I was actually there in 2020, and had took a trip home to see family, and was going to combine that with the Barkley, and so then COVID hit and the race got canceled, and so I was there, but the race wasn't. And then this year, the race went ahead, but I couldn't take the time to travel back, given how long I would have to quarantine on both sides and
Yeah.
everything else. So I wasn't able to make it. So one of these days, yeah, I want to go back and see how the course has been updated and see what I can do.
So I guess like your sports is one of the things that COVID is not hit so bad. I guess it's been good that you've been able to get out and run and still maintain. Like for myself, obviously the gym was shut for a long time. Rolling around with other sweaty men is not conducive with fighting off a global virus. You know, um, there's a cleanliness that doesn't go with rolling around with sweaty men. So, but yourself, I guess. Has there been like a big influx in the running community because of you've been able to do it? You guys been able to get out and run.
So you know, I was able to continue my training just fine, as most people were, if they could stay motivated and kind of stay on top of all the life changes it brought. Most races for a while were canceled. Those are at least hill races, trail races. Those are mostly up and running again, so that's exciting to see. But last year, I focused my efforts on these sort of individual challenges, where it's another thing I love about the sport is kind of the creativity you can have and making these new things. And so went out to test myself and go for a record on a well-established trail here, the Pennine Way, and then kind of completely made up my own thing later on in the year to tie together a bunch of fell running challenges and cycle between them.
So the Pennine Way one, there's the documentary. It looks like totally fucked, but it's totally FKT, right? For fastest known time.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so that's that documentary's on Amazon, I believe, right?
Yep. It's on Amazon and Vimeo or Vimeo, however you say it, and a couple things. But yeah, Amazon Video on Demand has it.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, I started watching that. I've not finished it. I've started to watch that. That's a great documentary for anyone in the UK to sit and watch because it's familiar terrain. We're in the UK. We know we know the weather. We know the climate. We sort of can understand. You don't have to have been there, but you know what Dartmoor looks like. So you know what Exmoor looks like, or you know what the Lake District. You can sort of relate because it's within the UK, and that's a great documentary for people to watch and understand your what you do. And the other one, which I am going to talk about shortly, the Grand Round, the documentary on YouTube about that is really cool, and people should definitely watch that. But I wanted to know what because you said you'd still been able to train a bit and stuff. What does training look like for you, week to week, daily basis? You know, food wise and stuff, and then how does it change if you've got a race coming up?
So it's not as much as a lot of people would assume. You know, time-wise, back when I was doing triathlons, that was taking up a lot more time, getting in the long bike rides and having to go to the pool and everything. So right now, I'm mostly training about 70 miles a week. which is around what serious marathon runners would be doing. There are some ultra runners out there who do twice that type of mileage, but they're mostly full-time athletes, whereas I've still got a day job and a family. I keep this hanging up on my door for work calls and just put it on over top of my
You're wearing
the
nothing.
shirt.
You're wearing nothing below the shirt, right? You're sat there
Yeah.
in your boxers, just ready to chill.
um, but yeah, so that's about it for me. And so it's worked really well, and I've been able to do that and not suffer burnout or injuries that some people who do super high mileage do. And so going into something like I kind of am right now, actually, I'm in a bit of a taper where I'll just ease off the mileage a couple weeks out and kind of let my body recover and rest up and be ready to go for the
So
start.
you say 70 miles a week. How's that divided? Everyday running, and you just think, right, I'm just going to pang today, and if I do 10 miles today, I'll try and do another 10 tomorrow. Or do you have set running days, or how does that?
Yeah, I usually rest 1 day a week. It's usually on my current schedule. It's Sundays. Have a long run on Saturdays. Have one kind of higher intensity workout that's on Tuesdays, and then the rest of the week is mostly kind of medium distance, easy with a few strides and a few hills thrown in here and there. Everything I do, by the way, is on Strava. I've been working with David Roach, a coach based in Boulder, Colorado, for a couple years now, and that's been great for me to just kind of be able to not have to worry about setting up my own training schedule and whether I'm doing enough. It's been a big stress relief to not have that pressure anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing just from reading stuff about you, watching some documentaries and stuff, I'm guessing that you, you're one of the unique guys because you seem very mentally strong. From being a coach more so than from being an athlete, I think you recognize different attributes in people. And I've taught guys who are technically very good, but mentally, it's a work. I'm there at fight night. I'm there for you mentally. I know that. And there's other guys who I'm there to be with physically. I need to be ready to tell them when to do something, or I need to watch it and might make a mistake here. Now, from seeing the way you talk, the way that you've explained things in some of your blogs and stuff, you seem to me that the mental aspect is your strongest attribute. I don't know if you'd agree with that, maybe, and possibly that's why your training is you're able to train the way you are and keep your body in good shape because mentally you can push yourself possibly a bit further than others.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of my biggest strengths. I used to honestly think it was kind of my only strength in doing these things. Again, I was by no means a star runner in high school. I've never been like a champion 5K runner or anything like that. So the longer the distance gets, of course, the more important the mental attributes and the factors other than speed become. It becomes a lot more than just pure raw physical talent. As I've progressed and as I've kept training and kept building up my base and my fitness and everything else, I think I have genuinely got fairly fast. Again, I'm not going to be going out and competing in the Olympics and the marathon or anything, but relative to kind of the average runner, I've got a decent amount of speed now, but that has followed. In my eyes, that has followed the mental strength.
You think that's because you didn't care about the speed? The speed is come because you didn't care about it, or you cared about. I'm only assuming here as well. Like you were more focused on, I want to complete this because this is my goal, not the sub so and so time is my goal. I'm going to complete this. This is my goal, and then mentally all the time you're talking to yourself of just push. You know your goal. Get through this. And then the times come because you weren't so much focused on it. You think?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I think that most people and the things they do, um, when they get started, their confidence comes from being strong at a particular attribute. And so I was strong at the mental game, and that's what I feel like led to my initial good results that gave me confidence, and then I kept kind of embracing that and building upon that. But at some point, if you want to keep progressing farther, you've got to raise your game and the other attributes as well, because you kind of hit the ceiling. And I'm as mentally strong as I'm ever going to be. So if I want to keep getting better, I've got to work on these other aspects. I've got to work on my speed, my strength, and my endurance, and everything else that goes into these multi-day events.
Yeah, that makes it. I mean, I've done one real, maybe a couple of others, but only one that I would call sort of an endurance event, really. And it was there's a paragliding race. There's two big paragliding races, really, called the X Pier and the X Alps. The X Pier is you start at one end of the Pyrenees and you're only allowed to hike or fly all the way to the other end of the Pyrenees, and you have to tag 10 waypoints. They'll be set certain sectors. So instead of it just being sort of 600 kilometer crossing, it could be 1100 kilometers because you're zigzagging across it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my longest day I think was 47 miles hiking that day. You don't run. There's no way you can run in this race because obviously you're 7 to 9 days on the ground. And I remember come day one, I completely messed up my diet and got severe cramps. And then come to day 3, my feet had took a bit of a pounding. And I remember waking up in the morning and I put my shoes on. And as I pulled them on, I was like, oh no. And you take like 5 steps out of the vehicle and you're like, oh, this sucks. Maybe I should be in my other trainers. Maybe these aren't the right trainers. Then you take 50 more steps and it settles a bit. Then you're a quarter of a mile down the road. Then you can lift your legs a little bit more and don't rely on the poles as much. Come an hour, I've not got the poles anymore and it feels easier just to move my body. I guess I've got sort of that much of an understanding that, when I woke up, I thought, I think I'm dead here. There's no way I can push on today. But then once you keep moving and you start going, my feet suddenly were no longer a problem. I'd still get like calf pains and stuff, but my feet were no longer a problem. And I think that's the draw for me was that, there's pains that I see or pains that I feel, but mentally I've got through them. You don't really get that in MMA and fighting other guys in cages. There's not the endurance side of it. So to prepare for that was so different for me. It was so, I didn't really know how to push myself through much more than we train. So you train less than you work, less than you compete. I train 10 times more for an MMA fight because I'm training for 3 5 or 5 5-minute rounds. Well,
Yeah.
I'll do 2 hours in the morning, 6 days a week, 2 hours in the evening, 6 days a week, all the way up to the fight. So I'm mentally pushing myself constantly more than I need to, other than when you're in a fight, someone's really elbowing you in the face trying to separate you from your consciousness. But other than that, it's not anything you haven't seen. I guess you're never taking your body to those extents. And although I did in that one race, I pushed that far, to be able to keep going is something that many people aren't going to realize they can do. And I guess my point is, like at what point do you think it just became, or do you think it still is an ongoing process where you can say, no, I can go further. No, I can go further. Because having watched the Grand Round, it's called the Grand Round, right?
Yep.
I haven't watched that. Seeing your descent at the end there, I'm like, at what point in your head, is there a point in every race where you're saying, fuck, I can't do it. Fuck, this is the end. I'm not going to make it. Does that come in every race? Or does it never come now? Because you know how to silence that noise.
So yeah, you've got to be able to pull from previous experiences to know that again, it can get better and you can keep going. But then the other thing is just to not focus on how much you've got left at any one of these things. If I stand at the start and think about how much I've got left, it's pretty overwhelming. And it'd be tempting to say right there, nope, I'm out. But focus on one peak at a time, one obstacle at a time. When I'm hurting that bad, it's not, hey, can I get to the finish? It's, can I get to the top of that hill, or can I get across this stream or whatever, just one step at a time. I know one guy that even just continuously repeats 30 seconds to himself. That he says I can always run for 30 seconds. So he runs for 30 seconds and he starts over and says, okay, just 30 seconds to go, and just keeps on repeating. So just breaking it down into little chunks that are mentally manageable is huge, and you've got to learn how to do that. But then also stretching it to kind of what you referred to, where you're training more than you're racing. And at that point, it might seem like you have a long ways to go, but relative to all the training and all the work that you've put into it, you're pretty close to the finish, even when you're standing at the starting line.
Yeah, that's the beginning of the end, right?
Yep.
But as soon as you start, I mean, for me, it was during that endurance thing, the X pair. Even the sound of my, like when your walking poles hit concrete tarmac, the little click, 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 that became meditative, because I could focus on the next click, as opposed to focusing on blister hurts, foot hurts, knee hurts. Just click, click, click. It became quite meditative, and so I imagine there's lots of instances like that for yourself. Do you use any music or anything, or are you just alone with your thoughts and you like to fight it out and grind it out?
Yeah, I've considered using music before on these multi-day things, mainly just to stay awake. I never use it in training. But I've always thought that maybe if I can, blast some good music when I start to get tired, that can help keep me alert. But otherwise, yeah, I'm mainly just inside and in my own thoughts when I hit that state.
And you train that way as well, just go out on your, just mentally get on with it and just don't listen to music.
Yeah, and I mean when I'm training, that's also kind of the one part of my day where I can be undistracted, not attached to something. So it's kind of nice to have that just free moment for the mind without having to listen to anything.
So the Grand Round, when I saw it, I was like, this has got to be the hardest thing he's ever done. Like, I looked at it and then I saw it, and then I had to go away and sort of look at it on paper and really sort of compute what it was that you were undertaking. I was like, this has to be the hardest thing this guy's done. There's no two ways about it, because as you'll explain exactly what it is, but then the bit where you go from each section, I mean, it seems to me that there's so many sections within one section, within one round, and then there's 3 of them. So, let us know, A, how your crazy brain came up with it, and then B, how it evolved, I guess.
Yeah, so there's 3 big classic fell running rounds in the UK. The most well known is the Bob Graham round in the Lake District. And then there's also the Paddy Buckley round in Snowdonia in Wales. And there's the Charlie Ramsey round in the Lochaber Hills of Scotland, near Fort William and with Ben Nevis included there. And so these rounds are meant to be completed within 24 hours. And so it's a big fell running challenge to complete these rounds in that time individually. But I came over here and, I want to see and explore as much as I can while I'm here. And I love mountain running and I love cycling. And so I said, I'll see if I can have a go at all of them at once, fit them all in and ride my bike in between them. It sounded like a pretty fun adventure and a good challenge.
It's yeah. Now I probably have a lot more knowledge of the hills than lots of other people, because I paraglide. So we paraglide a lot around Snowdonia. I cross country paraglide mainly, so I take off in one place and try and use the thermals to fly as far as I can. So the Lake District is a really well-known place for paragliding. I paraglide in the Lake District a lot. Scotland, infrequently. I try and go every year, but the weather can be quite bad. But I know sort of some of the hills that you're talking of, and I've had to hike up them once in a day to go paragliding. And it's not just a stroll up Pen y Fan on a Sunday afternoon. This is proper hill running, and then for you to say, yeah, and I ride my bike in between. And then so how many peaks are you hitting in each round? I know people can go on and Google this, but how many peaks are you hitting in each round? So the Snowdonia round, how many peaks have you got to hit?
It's 47 there, which you know that one's a bit. Some people would. It is 47 tops, but some of them are kind of a rock pile along a ridge line that you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't really qualify as a top. Whereas the Ramsey Round in Scotland has only 24 peaks, but every single one of those peaks is a legit big mountain that you're going up.
Yeah, and I get going up's not the problem, right? I guess going down's because I find going down when I was running in mountains, the descent was worse than the ascent for my body. Is it the same for yourself?
Yeah, I mean that can definitely that's what can wreck your quads and other parts of your legs and potentially cause injury. You know, and I would say initially going up is harder, but after a long enough time, the going down just breaks you down so much that that's what's going to cause the big fatigue and the potential injuries and towards the end of mine, yeah, that's definitely where I developed some really bad tendonitis in one of my legs, and I would have done anything to just be able to go up the rest of the way and not have to descend anything else.
So each one of these rounds you've ran before?
I had not run the Ramsey round before this.
Okay, and how did you get on in the other two rounds previously? You set good times that you were happy with, or?
Yeah, so I mean, my goal here was to do each round under 24 hours, and so to kind of not go much faster than that to try to conserve to pace myself for later on, and so that went pretty well on both the first ones. This was actually my second attempt at it. The first time I attempted it, I also completed the Paddy Buckley and the Bob Graham rounds, but then I hadn't properly scheduled sleep and everything else, and kind of decided that it was unsafe for me to cycle up the A82 into Scotland with lorries flying by every 5 minutes. So I I called it that time and scheduled more sleep for this past year.
So, what are we talking? If we were to lay the distance out of each run, how much are we talking distance wise in 24 hours for each of them? Do you know what the
So
linear
each
distance may be?
Yeah, it varies a bit because the idea is you're hitting each of these tops, and so again, 47 in Wales, 42 in the Lake District, 24 in Scotland. How you get between them is kind of up to you. So
Yeah.
there's a little bit of variation there, but generally each one is roughly 100K, 60 to 65 miles, with roughly 24,000 feet of ascent.
Wow. And so you've set yourself 24 hours for each challenge. So you're talking 100K in 24 hours. And then what's the protocol then? You do the run, you sleep, or you do the run, you get on the bike.
Yeah, so I tried to sleep between each section of this. So I had each round and then the bike, and so I tried to sleep on both ends of the bike
Mm-hmm.
to where I wouldn't need to sleep during the round or on the side of the road out when I was cycling. So I set it up to where my goal was to do each, including each bike section, within 24 hours. So that includes the sleep. So generally, it would be run, 2 or 3 hours of sleep, cycle to the next round, 2 or 3 hours of sleep before starting the round.
So
And
when you say cycle to the next round, what are we talking about mileage there? Because we're not talking round the block.
yeah, the first one from Wales to the Lake District was around 170 miles, and then from the Lake District up to Fort William was around 230 miles.
Fuck. I mean, just do you cycle regularly anyway, or is it something you had to really add in for this?
So, like I said, I did triathlon for a while. I went pro for one race just to kind of say I did before I retired. because I knew I'd be going full time to ultra running. So, and I was always pretty good at the run and the bike. I was horrible at the swimming. Just not good at all. And so that's one interesting thing that I have found, though, is that time training for triathlon and just building those neuromuscular connections for cycling. Like, I could pick up my bike, and within a few training sessions, like, I'm feeling pretty good on it again. I'm not
Yeah.
feeling tip top, like peak triathlon shape, but I'm feeling nice and strong, and like much stronger than I ever would have been had I not gone through all of that triathlon training. And
Yeah.
it just, it comes back quick.
Yeah, definitely. Would you say what would you say your preference was in a race like you? Sorry, not a race, in a challenge like what you were doing? Was there moments where you were just, I'm so glad I'm on the bike now and I'm not running, or were there moments where you were just like, oh, I'd do anything to get off this bike and just be running? Do you feel more comfortable just being running, or was it just, this is the part of the race that I'm in? I'm just happy being here now.
Yeah, it was pretty focused on the moment each time, but it was nice to have that kind of variability and transition. And if one thing started hurting near the end of the run or the bike, I could tell myself, well, yeah, you're almost done with this, and then you'll be doing something different, and it won't hurt as much. I'd started to develop a bit of the tendonitis near the end of the Bob Graham round, but then that didn't bother me much on the bike, fortunately. It was still there when I started the third round in Scotland, but I had a reprieve from it for a while at least.
Yeah, it's I mean, most people have never done one length of that time on a bike. So to relate it to putting it in after what you've already been through, the 100K running and over felt, it's insane. I mean, I love this sort of stuff, and even I'm hearing it, and I'm like, the guy's fucking insane because you came up with it. Like you came up with this thing when you were coming out of it. Was there not a point where you're like, maybe I could make it, like, we'll cycle, but maybe we'll jump on the train for half of it and we'll get a sponsorship from the railways. Like, what? You were purposely just looking for something that was going to be massively. Were you also thinking in your head, I'm going to do something and no one else is going to want to undertake as well?
Well, that's one thing that's been interesting for me is I have heard from some people that are interested in giving it a go, and I think it's a great trip. It's a great journey, especially if you kind of set your own schedule, set your own time goals. You don't have to try to do each part within 24 hours, but
Mhm.
it's like most of the things that I run. Most of the things I run, I tell people, yeah, that would be a great hike. Like, that'd be just a wonderful multi-day hike to go out, take the family on. It'd be good. Whereas one of the reasons I started running these things is because I didn't have time to hike them all. Uh, and but yeah, I've heard from a few people actually. I've been pleasantly surprised that are interested in taking on the grand round. One guy is actually interested in doing it unsupported, which is, that's next level crazy.
Yeah, wow.
No one to resupply him along the way, starting and finishing with starting with everything he needs to finish except for water from natural sources. That's just that's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. That is crazy. I mean, it's just, I guess that's the thing with these there's one man's like normal or comfort is another man's crazy, which is what I guess we expose here, because you're obviously an intelligent, um, for want of a better word, normal guy. There's nothing like obscenely weird about you, but you undertake these crazy things that for most people will seem absolutely insanity. And is there parts of you where sometimes you think, why the fuck am I doing this? Why am I not? Why can't I just be happy, just sitting down, eating sweets and doing nothing?
Yeah, that definitely happens sometimes. Sometimes it happens just going out for a training run on a day that I would rather just sit around. Sometimes it it almost always happens at some low point during these events themselves, and it's one of the ironies to me that when you hit those low points, one of the things that it gives you is it really forces you to realize what's valuable to you in life. Like what, when you're at that absolute lowest of lows and everything else is stripped away, like what remains that's still on your mind and that you still want. And so, I'm out there shivering in a named windstorm in the Scottish Highlands 5 days into this thing, and I'm thinking, just want to be home with my kids.
Yeah.
Just want to be home with my kids. And like the irony is that I'm not home with my kids because I'm out doing this thing that forces me to realize that I just want to be home with my kids. So there's a dividing line where up to a certain point you can reap some great rewards from this, and it pays off, but go beyond that and you start to get diminishing returns where you're losing out on more than you're gaining from it.
Yeah, some people hear what you say, and lots of people think, "Oh, yeah, that's these runners and stuff. They get all hippie and stuff like that." But it becomes at an athlete level when you start to partake in anything that pushes you, where you have to mentally question what you're doing physically. Because not many people have to mentally question if they're going to go out for a 5K run to burn a bit of weight. Any sport where you have to mentally question what you're putting yourself through physically, I think it does become that sort of cerebral hippie sort of give you that hippie sort of aspect to your life where you think, well, actually it strips it back and it just makes me realize what is important to me. It's not having loads of money in this moment, it's not this in this moment, it's these are my goals. I really want to achieve my goals, and whilst you're in the middle of achieving your goals, it's I value the things I miss right now, which is just the happiness and comfort for you, your kids and your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, definitely, to speak to someone like yourself and understand that the psychology is not that within sport. The psychology is not really that much different. I mean, where you can take yourself and how you can push yourself over those multi-day events is still absolutely nuts. But the psychology within the athlete's mind is not that different. And I guess, like, you would say, listen, I'm no one special. I'm a guy. Like, everyone can do it. I think that's the main thing for lots of people don't realize is that, look, you just got to get off your ass and keep pushing.
Yeah. I mean, I would have told you were absolutely insane even a few years ago if you told me I was going to do some of the things that I'm going to do. And I think that all of us have a limit somewhere, but until we really start pushing and exploring where it is, it's so far out of sight that we have no idea. We have no idea what it is. And so it's taken me a lot of years and a lot of kind of building up incrementally to doing these things that I've gotten to the point where I think I'm within sight of it, and I kind of know where it is at least.
And you think it's I already know the answer to this, I'm sure, but you think it's helped you become a better father, a better husband, a better person? You think all these things are attributed to other aspects of life?
Yeah, absolutely, in many ways. But again, it's just a matter of ensuring that I don't let the the, the time lost outweigh those benefits. There will always be diminishing returns, and on one hand, I'm a competitive athlete, I guess professional as far as ultra runners are concerned, and you have to chase those diminishing returns if you want to be at the top. But you've got to balance your priorities in life against that as well.
Yeah. So what's longevity like in the sport? How does it look? I don't know what the competitive. All I know is from being an athlete when my body's sort of diminishing. What's the longevity like for yourself? When's it diminishing? When are you getting to the point where you're thinking, right, I can't really push now. I'm still going to do it, but I'm not. My peak's going, and I'm not really there anymore.
So people tend to last pretty long in the sport, and I think it's a matter of it takes so long to build up the base and the experience that the sport takes, that by the time people's raw physical abilities start to diminish, they've progressed so far in their training and their experience that they're still able to compete with those people that physically are more capable, but don't yet have that experience and that training base built up. So, Damian Hall, the other guy in Totally FKT, who also just lives right over here in Wiltshire, he's 10 years older than me. He's in his mid 40s, and he is still competing at quite the high level and still out there breaking records.
Wow, we'll have to get one of these scheduled with him, I reckon, because I think it's so nice. Jiu-jitsu is such a great sport that we give it to lots of guys who are 40s, 50s. They can't compete with guys who are 20 who are wanting to be world champions, but they can come and they can take a different side of the sport from them. So to speak to someone who's that next step up in the age category and see how he's dealing with something like this would be fantastic. It'd definitely be good to speak to someone like him, because I'm very much into, like, the sports psychology has been my favorite part of what I've done for so many years. And when I talk to you, it's like the psychology that interests me. And maybe, I know you've got about an hour or so to do, which is brilliant. And then maybe when you get back from doing your next piece, we can have a talk and maybe have a talk about what psychology you've used, what books you've read, and how you've approached things that you think have helped you. And it's something we can do in the future.
Yeah, sure. And I've enjoyed it. You've got quite the interesting background yourself, and it's been I always enjoy getting different perspectives and discussing these things with people who do have different backgrounds. Although I have paraglided once. My wife got me a lesson for my birthday one year. It was
Oh yeah, did you enjoy it?
I did. I didn't get too far off the ground. I don't either the wind wasn't good or I wasn't good or
We'll
something.
change that. No, I'll take you. We'll go local to here, like Westbury White Horse or somewhere. We'll pick a really good day and we'll go and we'll have a day. We'll try and get you a couple of 1,000 feet up, let you fly it and stuff. We'll go, definitely.
Well, have you ever done a wingsuit?
Yes.
Okay.
So I've done I've got about 600 skydives, and I've done a few wingsuits out of a plane and some wingsuit base jumping, and I've got some of my friends were really highly respected in wingsuit, and I've done some of these podcasts with them, but a few of them have died as well, wingsuit base jumping, and
yeah,
I'm just like, in order to be great at it, you have to keep doing it. In order to keep doing it, you have to be great at it, and for me, the reward wasn't worth the risk. It didn't do enough for me. I like to jump off of buildings in cranes and like to pretend I'm James Bond and pick locks and stuff, and that's really cool. But when I go paragliding, I can take off of a hill, get on a thermal. Next minute, like the other day, I flew from Mere in Wiltshire by Longleat, and I flew up to Crewe, 229 kilometers.
Oh
Now,
wow.
it's 7.5 hours of flying. I can do 7.5 seconds of wingsuit base from somewhere off the side of a hill. It'd be super dangerous. Or I could take off for 7 hours and I can go paragliding with something that's really technical. So for me, I'm more drawn to that side of things.
Yeah, and with me again, running, it's people might think it's crazy and extreme, but at the end of the day, if it's more than I can handle, I stop and I sit down. Like, yeah, there are some dangers associated with it, of course, but it's not the extreme dangerous thing that people make it out to be.
Yeah, I mean, I saw in the Grand Round, I did see that you hiked a little bit here and there, and I thought, like, that's really cool to see that, like, it's not a race where you're bashing your body, but you're listening to your body and you're deciding when's best to run or when's best to slow down a little bit, which is, I guess that's the key to longevity, right?
Yeah, and I mean, ultra runners aren't going to be running uphill. It's not worth it. The speed you get from it is not worth the fatigue that it causes. So that's a big part of the strategy is learning how to properly pace yourself.
Yeah, I mean, mate, listen, I'm going to let you go because you said you had about an hour or so, and I don't want to keep you from your family and stuff, so I'll let you go. I've loved it. I could honestly, I'll talk to you for if you were just sat there, we'd talk for 3 hours. I've got so much I want to draw from you. But let's try and get another one in. I'll take you paragliding and we can talk about that experience as well. But I'm really, Mate, honestly, I'm over the moon you did this for me. And how can people follow what you're doing? What do you recommend that they go and watch that you've done? What should people, on the follow up to this, how should they stay in touch, and where should they watch what you've been up to?
So I've got a blog. It's randomforestrunner.com, and that links to most of my social stuff. As you mentioned, there's video on Totally FKT on Amazon, video on demand, the Grand Round on the on YouTube, and then I've got the Wainwrights coming up here soon that I'm going to be taking on the 214 peaks in the Lake District.
When does that start?
Here within a couple weeks. So these things are a bit conditions dependent, but it's that's what I'm tapering for right now. So
let's definitely catch up after that, because that's Wainwright's is really well known for paragliding. The hill, Scuffell Pike, all around that area is really, so lots of our listeners will know the area. So let's have a catch up after that, definitely. Yeah, people can they can just type your name, I guess, into Google. You're very well known. That'll come up. But I just did want to ask, the Random Forest Runner, is it that you run in random forests, or you're random and you run in forests?
So it's a bit of a play on words. My day job is a data scientist, and one of the algorithms we use there is called the random forest algorithm.
Okay.
So it's that combined with the fact that, yes, I love running through random forests.
I'm glad we got that cleared up, because it's been on my mind wondering where the name came from. John, honestly, mate, thank you very much for this. This will be out, later on today, and I'll get it shared and copy you into everything. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed it.